They came from the south, a land of sun-drenched plains and mighty rivers. The Cholas. Say the name, it sounds like a drumbeat, a call to arms. For 1,000 years, this dynasty didn't just survive. They thrived. They built an empire that stretched from the shores of India to the islands of what we now call Indonesia. They were warriors, yes, but they were so much more. They were builders, artists, sailors. Their story is etched in stone and cast in bronze, a story that has been whispered on the winds of the Indian Ocean for centuries, yet remains one of history's best-kept secrets. Forget what you think you know about ancient empires. The Romans had their legions, the Mongols, their horsemen, the Cholas. They had ships, hundreds of them. Their flag, a roaring tiger, was feared and respected across the Bay of Bengal. Their ports buzzed with merchants from Arabia, China, and beyond. They were a maritime superpower, a thalassocracy, before the word was even fashionable. Visionary rulers who saw beyond the horizon, men like Rajaraja Chola, the great king. So buckle up. We are going back in time, back to a world of sword fights and sea battles. The untold story of how a small kingdom in South India became the undisputed master of the seas, and why, even today, their legacy continues to inspire awe and wonder. And it all starts on the banks of a sacred river, under the hot southern sun. Long before the great emperors, long before the fleets, there was the river, the Kaveri, lifeblood of the Tamil people. It snaked its way through fertile plains, a green ribbon in a parched land. And here, in this cradle of civilization, the Cholas first made their mark. We're talking ancient times. The 3rd century BCE, maybe even earlier. They are mentioned in the edicts of the great Mauryan emperor Ashoka far to the north. They are there in the Sangam poems, the earliest literature of the Tamil people. They weren't an empire then. Not yet. They were one of 3 crowned kings of the Tamil country, alongside the Pandyas and the Cheras. Their early capital was a place called Urayur, a bustling port city famous for its fine cotton. It was a time of constant struggle, a game of thrones, South Indian style. The Cholas would rise, their power would grow, and then, just as quickly, they would be pushed back into the shadows by their rivals. Around the 4th century CE, they were eclipsed almost completely by other powers, the Kalabras and the Pallavas. The Chola name, the tiger sigil, all but vanished from the records. They became minor chieftains, holding onto small pockets of their ancestral lands, biding their time. But the memory of their former glory lingered. Then, in the middle of the 9th century, the flame flickered back to life. A chieftain named Vijayalaya, a name that means abode of victory, saw his chance. From this single city, the Chola revival began. The Cholas were back, and this time they weren't just planning to survive. They were planning to rule. The Chola revival that began with Vijayalaya was a slow burn. His successors patiently built on his success, brick by brick, battle by battle. They were chipping away at the old powers, expanding their territory, consolidating their rule. But the man who turned that slow burn into a raging inferno, the man who put the Cholas on the world map, was Arulmozhivarman. You probably know him by another name. Rajaraja Chola I, the great king. He ascended the throne in 985 CE, and nothing would ever be the same again. He smashed the rival Pandya and Chera kingdoms, destroyed their navies, establishing Chola supremacy over the Malabar coast. He conquered Sri Lanka, bringing the northern half of the island under his control. He pushed north, clashing with the powerful Chalukyas, but his genius wasn't confined to the battlefield. Rajaraja was a brilliant administrator. He conducted a massive land survey, meticulously recording land rights and revenue. He divided his empire into provinces, districts, and villages, each with its own local assembly, creating a sophisticated system of self-governance under his ultimate authority. And then there was the temple, the Brihadiswara temple in his capital, Tanjavur. This was his masterpiece. It wasn't just a place of worship. It was the center of his empire, a symbol of his power and piety. In this single structure, Rajaraja combined faith, power, and prosperity. He was the great king, and he had laid the groundwork for an even greater future. If Rajaraja was the great consolidator, his son was the great conqueror. Rajendra Chola I. He was every bit as ambitious, as ruthless, and as brilliant as Rajaraja, but his gaze was fixed on even more distant horizons. One of his most famous campaigns was his audacious march north. He sent his armies all the way to the Ganges River, the sacred heartland of northern India. They defeated the Pala king of Bengal and returned with water from the holy river. He built a new capital city, Gangaikonda Cholapuram. At its heart stood a magnificent temple to Shiva, a rival to his father's Brihadiswarar. The city itself was a sprawling, well-planned metropolis. This new city became the new nerve center of the empire, from which he would launch his most daring campaigns. Rajendra looked further. He looked across the sea, towards the wealthy trading kingdoms of Southeast Asia. He saw a rival, the Srivijaya Empire, and Rajendra Chola, the conqueror of the Ganges, decided that this would not stand. The ocean itself would bend to his will. The Chola military was a thing of terrifying beauty, a perfectly balanced machine of power and precision. On land, they were formidable. Their army was vast, well-organized, and permanent. But you know, the Cholas' real trump card, their secret weapon, was actually the navy. They built a blue water navy, capable of not just defending their coasts, but of projecting power across vast oceans. This fleet gave the Cholas an incredible strategic advantage. It protected their vital trade routes, which were the source of their immense wealth, and it allowed them to do what no Indian dynasty before them had ever done on such a scale: launch major overseas invasions. The year is 1025. In his capital at Gangaikonda Cholapuram, Emperor Rajendra Chola gives the order. The great fleet sets sail. This is no mere raid. This is a full-scale invasion, an amphibious assault on a scale the world had rarely seen. The target: the mighty Srivijayan Empire. The Srivijayans, secure in their maritime dominance, never saw it coming. The tiger was about to pounce. The Chola forces struck with lightning speed and devastating force. They captured the Srivijayan capital of Kadaram, seizing its king. This campaign was the high watermark of Chola power. The Indian Ocean was now a Chola lake. For a time, they controlled the vital trade routes to the Far East, reaping enormous profits and solidifying their status as a global economic superpower. The Cholas were not just warriors and sailors, they were among the greatest patrons of art and architecture in Indian history. The supreme example, of course, is the Brihadiswara temple in Thanjavur, built by Rajaraja I. It is a monument to devotion and an engineering marvel. They were masters of bronze casting. Using the lost wax technique, their artisans created some of the most beautiful metal sculptures the world has ever seen. They were designed to be carried in processions, living gods moving among their people. The walls of the Brihadiswara temple were once covered in vibrant frescoes. This explosion of art was fueled by the immense wealth flowing into the empire from its conquests and trade. The Chola kings poured their resources into creating a cultural legacy. The stone and bronze of the Cholas still speak to us today of their power, their faith, and their incredible artistic vision. The Chola ships that sailed the eastern seas carried more than just soldiers and merchants. They carried ideas. The Chola Empire became a powerful engine of cultural transmission, leaving a deep and lasting imprint on Southeast Asia. The Cholas were devout Shaivites, worshippers of Shiva, and they promoted their faith wherever they went. We see the influence of Chola-style Hinduism in the art and architecture of the region. The Chola ports, like Nagapattinam, were cosmopolitan hubs, teeming with sailors and merchants from across the known world. The Cholas maintained close diplomatic and commercial ties with the Song dynasty in China, trading South Indian textiles, spices, and precious stones for Chinese silks and porcelain. Tamil merchant guilds established communities in port cities across Southeast Asia, leaving behind inscriptions and artistic styles of Chola origin. No empire lasts forever, not the Romans, not the Mongols, and not the Cholas. The peak of their power under Rajendra Chola was magnificent, but it was also unsustainable. By the 13th century, the Chola giant began to stumble. The final blow came in 1279. The Pandyan king Maravarman Kulasekara Pandyan I defeated the last Chola ruler, Rajendra Chola III. The tiger flag was lowered for the last time, but the end of the empire was not the end of the Chola story. Their legacy was too powerful to simply disappear. It lived on in the magnificent temples they built, the exquisite bronze statues, and the sophisticated system of local self-government they established. And it lived on in the cultural DNA of Southeast Asia, a testament to their far-reaching influence. Today the Cholas are remembered as one of India's greatest dynasties. Their story is a powerful reminder of a time when the ships of southern India were the masters of the eastern seas. It is an epic of ambition, power, faith, and art. An echo in time that tells us of a forgotten superpower, the lions of the southern seas, whose roar once shook the world.